So you wrote an article, dispelling three quarterback myths as the Browns get ready to decide, do they take a quarterback, number 2 overall. First one that you had is there's too much risk in drafting a quarterback early. Second one, just better to wait another year when the class is better. And the third one, physical tools are the most important thing. So take us through that and kind of your thoughts through it.
Well, number one is kind of a common thing, the risk of taking the quarterback too early, and the idea that if you're picking early in the draft, you kind of want the safer player. And in theory, that makes sense, but it it doesn't really change the fact that, every player you take has some kind of inherent risk. There's no such thing as a sure thing in the NFL. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect prospect. Even guys like Joe Burrow and Myles Garrett, who were widely considered number one guys, they had their own flaws coming into the NFL. They weren't considered the elite perfect prospect. They're human beings after all. So just because it's a high pick and you maybe feeling risk averse, it doesn't change the fact that if you don't address the position, you have no chance of improving it. Whereas if you address quarterback early, you at least have a shot to improve it. And typically, the earlier in the draft, the better chance you have to hit than to swing and miss. And I think at quarterback, I'd rather swing and miss early than not swing at all and see the guy that you pass on become a Pro Bowler for another team. So that's number one. Number two, the idea of waiting for a year for the class to get better. Again, I think it goes back to some hesitancy. Obviously, this is not as deep a draft as, 2024 when it comes to quarterbacks. Daniel Jeremiah did his conference call on Thursday. I asked him where he would put Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, and he said he would have Ward kind of tied with Bo Nix behind in that top five of quarterbacks, right behind Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jane Daniels, and JJ McCarthy, and then Shadur Sanders would be 8 behind Michael Penix Jr. So obviously, it's not as deep a class, may not be as strong a class at quarterback, but the idea that you're going to wait a year, you're putting a lot of extra variables out there because there's so many other things that can change in a year. I look at 2026 in particular. People are penciling in Arch Manning as the number one pick. There's no guarantee he's even going to be in next year's draft because he's only started 2 games in college, and we've seen quarterbacks more often in this NIL era, players in general just staying for that extra year and getting that extra college experience before going to the pros because they're getting paid. Also in that class, Drew Aller, the Penn State quarterback that people thought, if he had entered this draft, the Browns should consider taking second overall. There's no guarantee he makes the leap everybody thinks he's going to make. I singled out Clemson's Cade Klubnik and South Carolina's Lenora Sellers as guys I really like. They have to continue to take those steps forward in 2025. And even when I look at this class in particular, you're waiting for somebody else to catch up to Shadur Sanders' level. Other than Cam Ward, it didn't really happen. Carson Beck was the guy who was considered 1A, 1B with Shadur. He's not even in this draft. He did not have a good season. He had that elbow injury that he suffered in the SEC title game, and now he's in Miami. Then you have Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers not taking steps forward. So that's why it's a dangerous game to always to think you can push this decision off here because you never know what you're going to get. And there's also no guarantee you're going to be picking in a good spot to get one of those guys anyway. And number three, physical tools. I think we all kind of, we are all kind of guilty of this a little bit in some way. I mean, when you watch a highlight tape, you're not looking for progressions. You're not looking for where guys' eyes are. You're looking for how strong the arm is. You're looking for how mobile he is. And it takes more time and more nuanced viewing to really get the idea of what a quarterback can be, not just from a physical standpoint. Because if physical tools were all that would matter, you would have guys like Russell and Paxton Lynch should be superstars. Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson got drafted early in part because of their elite physical tools, and so far their careers haven't gone well. Even going back to Joe Burrow. He for as great a player as Joe Burrow is, there were questions, how strong is his arm? And, even concerns, he's got smaller hands. So I think we fall into the trap of relying too much on physical tools rather than what's upstairs because quarterback is as much a mental game as any position, if not more than every other position.